Okay, it is 6:17. I will call this meeting to order. If we will all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Roll call. Sorry. Jill Maddock Nelson. Here. Bobby Braun.
Here.
JD Schrader.
Here.
Angie Schreiber.
Here.
Kristen Matt Miller. Didn't know if she was coming. Catherine Solon.
Here.
Dr. Bardo.
Here.
And there. And then we have, Scott said he was going to be late. Scott Peterson. And Danny Pine.
Here. Public comment? No?
No public comment.
Okay, administration reports, student benchmark data results. I will turn it over to Mrs. Oginski and Ms. Stetson.
So at this time, we have the winter benchmark data, and we will follow the same procedure that we did the last time, where I encourage all of you to go sit in the audience, have some light supper. Ms. Stutzring will kick off our winter benchmark data, and it will be a little more casual environment. Building principals will also present their data, and you will be given an opportunity to ask questions. Okay?
Is it working? There we are. So I'm going to start with the district data across the board and talk through kind of our differences, mainly at our elementary building with Act 20. We started that in winter in January, so I want to talk through that with everyone so that you can understand why some of our data cannot be compared from fall to winter because it won't be apples to apples, and express why we did what we did on the data monitoring sheet that you're looking at on the screen. If you have questions during, please ask. Feel free to just shout it out. JD, feel free. Open mic for you. All right, so this winter is the first time that we started our Act 20 literacy assessments. So when you're looking at the data, 4K, we decided, because Act 20 said we did not need to test them until spring of this year, we wanted to get really good with the expectations that we were required to do. We will start 4K on Ames Web Plus in the spring. So 4K took early reading and early math on FastBridge, just like they always have. So when you look at the 4K data, you will see we have 81 students across our district. We have 22% identified below grade level, and that is a 15% increase of percentage of student growth from fall to winter. So you can see all the way on the right the column that says plus 15%. Okay, just like last time. That's a really big celebration. Our 4K have been doing a lot of work around shared writing and shared reading with CISA 6. We have a coach named Laura Deering who comes in. She was actually here today doing embedded coaching around our 4K program, which is a significant reason why we have such good data at our 4K. Our goal for 4K is to walk out of 4K into kindergarten with no one below. And we are pretty confident that we can get very close to that goal or meet that goal. So 4K is doing an amazing job in all three buildings, up that 15% as a district. And they've already started their skill groups, which means they've identified their data. They've identified skill groups, and we're enriching the students that already met the expectation and pushing them on to some higher level skills, including reading horizon, so they're doing some phonics if they've already got those letter sounds and those letter names down. We want to continue to push them on and help those students who are still working on some of those skills at the 4K level. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How many of those students are English as second language students?
We don't identify 4K kids as EL or multi-language learners until we do a screener at the beginning of kindergarten. So do we have students who do speak a different language as their first language? Absolutely. In our 4K programs, we have 2 students currently that don't speak English as their first language, but we'll do the screener then into kindergarten. If they do qualify then, they will be added to our group of students, our subgroup of EL multi-language learners. Okay? Yes. All right, any questions around 4K? So now we get into kindergarten through 3rd grade. We still took math on FastBridge because, again, we wanted a system into this new plan and into Ames Web and Act 20 that was sustainable and something that we could grow our teachers with us and not just do to them, so that they really understood the process. So kindergarten through 3rd grade continued their math on FastBridge. We focused mainly on the literacy because that's part of the Act 20 component that we needed to do in winter for kindergarten through 3rd grade. They took their first round of Ames Web Plus testing. The difference between FastBridge and Ames Web Plus, and you'll hear about more as we go throughout the year and into next year, is that it's taking a deeper dive into our skill sets of every student. So when they took FastBridge, we might have tested them on letter sounds in kindergarten, the onset sound or the first sound of a word, the nonsense words, those blending of sounds together, making words that are not real words, and word segmenting, which means breaking that word apart. When we took the Ames Web, and I gave everyone a packet that looks like this, you can see there's specific things that we have to test for Act 20 at each grade level throughout the year. We actually added on a few extra assessments because we wanted to make sure that we really had a understanding of where the deficits are for our students. So that way we can identify them and then make sure that we're filling those gaps if needed. So when we did our Act 20 testing for Ames Web, what we did is we went through kindergarten through 3rd grade students. We tested their benchmark screener, which means a group of different skill sets. So for kindergarten, it was initial sounds, letter naming fluency, letter word sounds, phoneme segmentation, and auditory vocab. We gave every student in kindergarten those 5 assessments. I gave you a packet, and if you flip through them, you can kind of see examples of those assessments if you're wondering what does that mean and what do those assessments look like. After we gave those 5, certain subtests said if they fell below on their composite score, so they took those assessments, put it together in a composite score, if they fell below the 25th percentile, then we had to move on to step 2 of the Act 20 plan. Step 2 is 7 more assessments for every student under the 25th percentile. So when you're looking at how do we accomplish this in a district, it is very difficult. We were lucky enough to have coaches, instructional coaches, to help with that testing process, because if a kid fell under, every kid had to take 7 more assessments within a 10-day window. So if I test you on one day, I have 10 days to finish all of those assessments if you fell below the 25th percentile. There's a clock running on it, so we had to keep track of when we tested and when we completed. So the second step or third step of the Act 20, if I fell below the 25th percentile, I'd have to do listening comprehension, spelling assessment, Haggerty, which is phonemic awareness, which means hearing the sounds of words, phonics screener, and high-frequency words. So that's the extended part. So what's really great about Ames Web Plus and Act 20 is that if I fell below and I have skill gaps, now we've done all these other assessments, we drill down to the exact deficit of a student. And now we can intervene on that exact deficit. FastBridge didn't give us that level of understanding about a student's need. So doing all these extra assessments, yes, took a lot of time. However, it has really been given us the opportunity to directly identify the skill gap, address it in small group targeted skill groups within our classrooms, and then be able to show growth around that. Any questions just right there around the Ames Web testing? Okay.
How long does it take, like each, is it like 10 minutes for the 7 tests, or like an hour?
Nope, depends on how squirrely the kid is, if they're really focused with you. It took about 15 minutes per kid to do all the extra assessments. One of the tests, the spelling, you could do in a group, so we took all the kids at that grade level who fell below and did that test all together. But it was a lot of planning and a lot of organization to make sure we hit all of these students. The teachers were involved in step 3 because we wanted them to be able to test their students and know exactly where that deficit was, because then what we did after that, once testing was completed for the students within those 10 days, we had 5 more days to get their reading plan done. So anyone who fell below the 25th percentile right now has a specific reading plan that was sent home to parents. They have to sign and give us permission or understand that and acknowledge that we sent the reading plan. It's similar to an IEP in the aspect that we are specifically creating goals around what they need to learn in order to be successful. There's criteria also around how do I get off of this reading plan in the future. So I'm going to be coming back to the school board in the next couple months around a policy around Act 20 that we have to make sure we understand the promotion policy of how I exit a reading plan, or how do I move out of 3rd grade if I still have a reading plan into 4th grade? What does that look like for me? Okay, so the reading plan had their goals, it brings in their progress monitoring, and that way our teachers said, we know which students have these specific needs, we are going to target them in small group instruction within the classroom. So some of our students are getting our core, they're getting a small group on those deficits, and they're getting a tier 3, which might mean a really intensive intervention around some extreme gaps. We have some students that are closer to that proficiency line, and some students that are further away. Okay, the big thing for 1st through 3rd grade is the oral fluency. That's reading a sentence with intonation, making sure that I'm reading not like chunking words and not being choppy, but reading with great fluency. That is what is our struggle right now when you get to where I show you the reading plans, because a lot of our 1st graders haven't been reading like a full paragraph yet, but we know where to get them to by spring then, if that makes sense. And it gives us, our teachers, an understanding of the level of rigor that our students should be at those grade levels, because I think sometimes we don't always know what should a 1st grader be reading. This is the passage right here, and I think there's some examples in your packets of a fluency passage at each grade level with the level of vocabulary and decoding that they need in order to be successful to move to the next grade level per Ames Web. Okay? So when you look at the screen under kindergarten, you're going to see a percentage, and I want to make sure we yep.
We used to always say Ames Web is norm to something national. Is it
Explain what you mean. Can you say it again?
You know, when you say this is what a passage of first grade
Yep.
to read is, how do they pick that? Is that only for Wisconsin? It used to be like a long time ago, we'd say Ames Web is normed to the country, but maybe it wasn't the same as our demographics or something.
Yeah. Yeah, the NEAP standards, I believe. So the Ames Web is norm criterion, from what I know, and it's not just Wisconsin, it's for like the country normed standards. So against kids their age across the country of where they should fall, right? And with FastBridge, we either had the benchmark or the norm criterion. We chose the benchmark as in that cut score of like, you have to be this proficient in order to move on, like, so that you're successful, rather than comparing you to other people. Kind of in the same vein of, as we look at the state report card, like, yes, we can compare ourselves, but if everyone's doing really bad, do we want to compare ourselves to that? Or do we want to compare ourselves to like a cut score of this is what I need in order to move on? I can get you more information too around Ames Web. They have changed it from the past. I used Ames Web in the past. It is definitely updated, which is exciting because I think we obviously shouldn't go backwards to what we used before. So it's exciting that it's updated on some of those pieces.
But it does seem better to you now than FastBridge.
Yes. Well, I will say, I don't own either company. I will say we are finding as teachers that we are getting more data from Ames Web Plus with all of these extra screeners to make sure that we can really identify where our kids are missing the mark in order to be readers.
And it's sort of clear, like it's not like sending the teachers on a wild goose chase.
No, it's very clear, because when you look across, if I share the spreadsheet with you, which I won't because it's confidential, but you can look across and you can see if this kid has less in this category and they're scored a 2 and they should have a 15, right there, I know that's a deficit. Hey, they got 10 out of 10 on this part. If they're doing phoneme segmentation, awesome. Let's go on. Oh my gosh, they have another need in nonsense words. Perfect. Now I know which groups and what I need to focus on as a teacher to make sure that I fill those gaps. And then we just keep filling gaps till we have the proficiency we need.
Can you put in the plan, hey, parent, read this decodable passage at night with your kid?
Absolutely, and we did. So one of the piece of the reading plan is that whatever we say your student's deficit is, we wrote a goal around that for every student specific to them, and then we said, because this is a deficit, we are putting your student in a small group targeted skill group, and here's a sheet where you can help them at home using this strategy. So all the parents got a strategy specific to the goal in which their kid is working on. And that all went home with all of their data, their reading plan, and that sheet, and then an acknowledgement sheet that they had to send back to make sure they saw the reading plan. Yep. I think, I will say, we have to do a better job of educating our parents on it as we get better as a district around Ames Web. We've already talked about having some family nights where we bring them in and show them, like, this is what we mean by fluency. This is what we mean when we say nonsense words. We do send a lot of information home from HMH at the elementary level, which is our Inter-Reading ELA program, that says, this is what we're working on in this unit. This is how you can help your student. But yeah, the parent has to read it and do it, but we can always educate and make sure they have all the information that they need to be successful at home.
Do you think parents would be more likely to attend a meeting where they could just click in and watch you do it compared to
Coming physically into the building, maybe, yeah. Or we could send out videos over Class Dojo explaining it, like, this is your child reading, this is how you can practice at home, and modeling. We've talked about some of those pieces moving forward, of how do we get the community and parents involved in that.
It just seems so hard to me, you have 20 kids in here, even when I read with my daughter, she has to have feedback on that individual word. It seems so hard to get in the small group, to get feedback of all these kids, and so to get extra practice at home.
Yeah, we love extra practice, but it's also our job as educators to have them 8 hours a day to educate the children of Anago and make sure they're ready. So I love that a family would offer and support their child, but that's not what we rely on, because all kids in equity for our students, whether I have a parent who works second shift and can't, that is our responsibility and our job to ensure that our kids have what they need. But we will never say no to families helping. Yeah.
Amy, so I'm looking at kindergarten, 65 and we're at, which means that below, 44 reading plans. So what is the difference between those 21 kids compared to the 44?
Yes, so that was what I was getting to next. So, thank you. Ames Web Plus said 25th percentile, the Act 20 said that's where we have to have a reading plan. So in Antigo, we talked about it because Fastbridge used to be 40 percentile and below. And so when we had discussions, we're like, are we lowering the bar for our Antigo students by saying now at 25th percentile is proficient? But Fastbridge had 40th percentile. Ames Web says 30th percentile is proficient. We decided as Antigo that we're going 40th percentile. Because if I'm at the 40th percentile, I'm on track to where I need to be as a reader. So when you look at that percentage, that's why it doesn't correlate with the 44 reading plans in kindergarten, because we took the 40th percentile and below. That's 59% of our students in kindergarten are the 40th percentile and below. 25th percentile and below, we have 44 reading plans. Yep, so when those percentages don't add up and you're doing the math in your head, that is why. Okay, we wanted to show, so in spring, I can bring some comparison of where we are growth-wise percentage. I just can't do that now because I can't compare Fastbridge to Ames Web, but I want to give people an understanding. We have 44 reading plans that we have written for kindergartners. That's way too many. We've talked about that as teachers, the effort put in to make sure all this happens within 15 days. We have too many students falling below, and this is why our plans from now till spring look like they do, so that we can make sure we leave this year with less reading plans than what we are right now. So looking at first grade, you can see that 72% is the 40th percentile and below around that oral fluency, which we just talked about. Our kids having to read full sentences and paragraphs in first grade, we are practicing that currently, but we have to do all the decodable skills ahead of time, so we're gonna see a lot bigger growth from winter to spring in first grade around the fluency part. Absolutely. Yes, we have more decodables and Start Right readers and Rigby readers, which are like the next level, and blended books, where now we're blending that together when HMH, and then in any program that I've seen as of recent. So we do have a lot of decodables that match exactly to what they're teaching in the skill.
I forgot completely, is it digital, so if a parent wanted to read at home, you'd have to send them a link, or do you send a physical book?
We send a book, yep. Because we want that physical book where they're annotating and maybe highlighting, pointing to the words rather than on a screen. We can definitely send it in a PDF, and we have in certain instances when a parent asks for it. We can do it both, but we try to send it home paper form because we put them in their reading buckets, so they're practicing during the week, and then when I take it home, I'm super fluent in it, and I can practice my fluency with my family. So I'm getting that skill, and I'm not learning a different skill at home, like decoding it wrong by myself. We really practice that during the week, and then we send those decodable books home. So you can see second grade, we have 56% of our students below that 40th percentile on oral fluency. The oral fluency is what gets us a reading plan if we're the 25th percentile and below. We have a lot of grade 2 students. So when we talk to all of our second grade teachers, they're like, yes, we need to practice fluency more. We were trying to fill some of those gaps of decoding and some of those phonics skills, and now we need to push them to reading. And so we have a plan for that that we'll kind of talk about at the elementary level. Third grade. Yes, yes. Our phonemic awareness is way better than it has been in past years, so hearing the sounds, that's that first kind of stage. Our phonics is better because we've been using Reading Horizons. We have structured literacy within HMH, so that has been a huge push. Our teachers are better educated around phonics as well, so that has been in the classroom excellent because they are able to help support students in a better way. And then we worked on that fluency all the time. But we're seeing better fluency because our decoding is better because of our phonics.
I don't know if it's correct scientifically, but it feels better to me that, like, once you decode, you're gonna get there. Versus if you're gonna get the fluency, but if you can't decode, it's
Yes.
a long way to go.
Yes. And some of our kids are really good at passing that they know how to read in elementary school, and we've talked about this with the middle school, that they get to the middle school and then we see them drop in their fluency, and we're asking, why do they do that? Well, because I get to bigger words or multi-syllable words, those multi-syllabic words, and I don't know how to chunk them into nonsense words and blends because I don't have a foundational skill that I kind of faked my way through, and now I can't fake it anymore, and we see a dip. So we know as a system, when you get to the middle school data, we have some gaps still in phonics and some of those foundational skills, and we're seeing it in their fluency. So if we shore that up, you are absolutely correct. We should be readers fluently, working on our comprehension and vocabulary. Okay? Third grade, we have 35 reading plans. You can see as we get to third grade, so we have 44 in kindergarten, 49, 56, and only 35 in third grade. So that kind of also shows that as we're moving towards middle school, we are lowering those reading plans, and we have a really good plan for third grade across the district on how we're gonna make sure we pass. I know the middle school is like, how many are you passing us there? Hopefully hardly any. This also includes our students with IEPs. So students with a learning disability, the state and DPI kind of say through Act 20, they still need a reading plan, but they also have an IEP. They should be kind of correlated together. We're not there yet on that, but I wanted to make sure that this also includes our students with IEPs. So some districts don't tend to report that way. They just report reading plans, but they take out the kids with IEPs or ILPs for EL. But if we say all is all, then we know all of our reading plans. We know what the growth we have to make. Okay? Any questions on Ames Web Plus Act 20, kind of our first go round? I'm gonna pump up teachers and coaches because when I hear from all other districts, Anago had the best plan and the best kind of rollout of Act 20, where it hasn't stressed out teachers as much as I've heard other districts it has, because we have instructional coaches and really great title teachers that were able to come in and a reading specialist and do the testing so that teachers could continue to teach. Other districts had to stop all their teaching while the teachers gave all these assessments. So the screener plus 7 more for every child that fell under the 25th percentile, they had to stop instruction for a long time. We wanted to make it a priority that our kids were still learning while we were doing the testing so that we didn't have to stop any of that. So a celebration for our teachers and our coaches and kind of how they rolled out the plan for Act 20. We're gonna shore it up because we definitely made mistakes in it for spring and do it even better, but as we go through, we're gonna continue to make it better. We will switch to Ames Web Plus for math next year. And for the rest of the district next year. This year, we're gonna continue with Fastbridge how we have it. We're gonna add 4K in spring to Ames Web Plus, but then next year we'll roll out everyone in Ames Web. So kind of a transition from Fastbridge to Ames Web Plus. So we didn't just yank it on everyone this year to make sure that they could have their goals set. Okay? You'll see fourth grade, we had a -7%. This goes right back to our normal Fastbridge A reading. We had +1 fifth grade, sixth grade, we had 0% growth, seventh. That is not good. That is negative growth. Yep, we're back to Fastbridge, where from fall to winter, now we can compare it. From fall to winter, we went down 7%. So in red is bad, in green is good, minus the 0. Okay? Seventh grade went up 4%, eighth grade down 4%, ninth grade up 3%, 10th grade down 13%, 11th grade down 8%. So definitely,
Can I interject?
yes, ma'am.
one quick thing?
Yep.
One thing to notice, and you may not be able to see it just from tonight's data, but when you look at the overall percentage of growth or lack of growth, the biggest gains are always made in those early years, and once kids get to the middle school age, the percentage of growth usually is always much less. That's why it's so important to make sure we're intervening early on, because that growth just seems to dwindle. And it's a common trend, it's not an Anago thing. But I think it also helps to lift up the fact that of the importance of making sure we're getting it right at the elementaries before we send them to the middle school. Sorry, I didn't want to.
No. Yes, and also like with seventh grade, last year at this time had a -6% and we're up 4% this year. So when you kind of look from last year's data to this data, there is celebration in there, where last year we went down 6% in that grade level. Those same teachers now are moving up. So if we look at that, like eighth grade had -13% last year. Yes, we have -4%, not what we want, but as we look at trends line, we're moving, even though we're still negative, in the direction that we want to be going in. And like, yeah, ninth grade had only +1%, now we have 3%. So we're seeing some gains from last year's data if we're looking at trend lines to this year, not where we want it to be. So no one's making excuses about it, but as we try to make sure that our teaching is getting better and instruction every year is getting better from fall to winter in these grade levels, we are seeing growth in that aspect, okay? And then if we scroll down to math, math is all Fastbridge. That's why there's no reading plans. Some people want math plans, which is very exciting. But this is all Fastbridge. So the growth from winter or fall to winter. So you will see 4K made 19% growth. Kindergarten made negative 1% growth, first grade 13% growth, second grade 8% growth, third grade 4% decrease. We are piloting from K-5 a math pilot. This is our pilot year, as you guys remember. Not that that's an excuse, I just wanted to bring it to light that we're doing the pilot. Fourth grade is positive 5%, fifth grade positive 7%. So we're looking at that data too as we're trying to determine what we're gonna bring to the board as our recommendation around the math piloting program. All right, sixth grade, we're negative 1%, seventh grade, yes.
Tell, is it like, sometimes if you just don't get as far as the standard expects you to get, you're gonna look like you did not get growth?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, can you tell if it's that versus not learning the things as well that you studied?
You can't really tell in FastBridge. That's why it's going to be interesting as we move to Ames Web for math and do some of those actual screeners. What happens in FastBridge is if I'm a student who's taking it and it changes to based on the number I'm getting right or wrong. So if I get to like 4 groups of 3 and I don't know it's 12, and then they ask me 4 groups of 4 and I'm not understanding groups of, I get stuck in that performance band and I can't go to other concepts like perimeter that I might actually know. It doesn't let me move forward. So then it kind of locks me in this score as a student of like, this is where I am. So I might know perimeter area, I might know multiplication on a different, like if I'm doing a problem, a word problem, I can't get there because I can't pass this performance band. So then it sticks me in there. One thing we talked at the middle school is we want more data around math, around like what is the deficit so that we can really address it. I don't think right now we have all that data that I think we could have to make it. So we're hoping that Ames Web gives us a little bit more data in that aspect. Yes. Reports, pie graphs. Yes. Nope, it's actually easy to use because it shows exact standards that they have not mastered as a student. Gives you this little graph of here are the ones you mastered, here are the ones you haven't. It allows a teacher to go in and then say, hey, you need to work on this standard. So if I click it, then all those questions on Dreambox come to me as a student around that standard. So that's really helpful. Or as we look towards the forward assessments coming up in a month, I can say, oh my gosh, we haven't hit a lot of those geometry standards that we need to. I'm gonna intentionally hit geometry standards for 8th grade so that those questions on Dreambox come to them around geometry. So there's a couple different ways you can use it. You can use it to fill deficits or push to a higher standard. Yeah, I could get those reports. I don't have them tonight, but I can pull Dreambox reports for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you have to use it consistently. I think there's like, it's not a program that you're like, oh, every Monday we love Dreambox and we use it. There's some goals around 5 to 7 lessons a week, and making sure you're hitting your goal and doing those things. So it can't be a sporadic thing and then you think, oh, well, Dreambox isn't working. You have to use it to some like parameters to make sure. And then we have 8th grade, plus 5%, plus 6% in 9th grade, minus 4% in 10th grade, minus 11% minus 6% in 11th grade. And I was just gonna check last year's. We had, like, 6th grade had negative 3%, now we have negative 1. 8th grade had negative 1% last year, now we have positive 5. Positive 3 in 9th grade, now we have positive 6%. So some of those pieces that we're seeing moving in the right direction, like I said, I want to uplift that to make sure we know. Again, a lot of work to do. No one's standing up here saying like, Anna goes perfect, all of our kids are succeeding. We know that's not true, but we have a really good plan and we have really good resources and people that are doing the right work at the right time for our kids. Okay? Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to the high school. It's 2 fingers to scroll if you want.
Can you scroll on this thing?
I can scroll if you want me to.
It's 2 fingers to scroll if you want.
It's an app.
Oh my gosh.
We don't have to. We can just, you might not be able to see the data. We're not great at apples. I messed up Amy's computer the other day. Okay, so a lot of the things that you see in our data don't look great right as when you look at them, right? Like the first time that I pulled up our middle of the year FastBridge data, I kind of wanted to I was not happy because it looks awful. And we've spent a lot of time challenging our teachers this year. We spent a lot of time doing change. We've spent a lot of time introducing all sorts of new things and pushing in all sorts of directions. So I dug a little bit deeper and looked at what it truly looks like, right? Because when you look at, especially our ELA, when we're minus 13 in 10th grade, like that's a huge number and not something that we were taking lightly in any fashion. However, when you dig deeper and you look at last year compared to this year, and I have a graph for you that I printed off. I didn't have great access to last year's data, probably because I didn't know how to use the system well, but we right now are still higher where we ended last year. So we did have a huge dip. We had a huge gain, and we're still higher than where we ended at the end of last year. So our kids are thank you. Our kids are closing gaps. And you can't always see that when you just see like minus 13 and when you see minus 8. However, when she went over our math data, we know that when you get to math at this level, there's a ton of words in math. So our math percentages are much higher and they are going in the right direction. So that's another indicator that we're closing gaps in ELA. But our kids, it gets harder as you get older. And if you are already starting behind, it is harder to make 2 years of growth in 1 year. So it's not that they're not growing, they're just not at grade level yet. So some of the things that we did first semester was we started interventions at the high school for the first time. I am not going to lie, when you tell a 10th grader or a 12th grader or an 11th grader that they are going to be in an intervention, you get a lot of pushback from a 15, 16, 17-year-old. So there was a lot of hesitation from our kids, and we really had to work on buy-in and culture with our kids and some of our families, to be totally honest, and really getting them to see. So there's a lot of conversations with families of sitting down and saying, this is where your student is at right now. These are the skills that this intervention is going to work on, and this is where your student could be in 4 months if they truly put some effort in, and it will make school easier for them in the long term. So we had a lot of those conversations at the beginning of the year. We've seen progress with those kids. 15 of our students who were placed in intervention are now graduated from intervention and at grade level. And for a school that hadn't been doing interventions, that's a huge deal. So we now this semester have 4 additional intervention courses. We also were working on in-person credit recovery. So our students who needed.
So in intervention, is that one-on-one with a coach, or is that a group, or is that a?
Small group. Some of it's small group and some of it is online with a teacher to help guide them. So it kind of depends. We have a couple. We have IXL for ELA. We have some IXL for math. And then we have language exclamation, which is an in-person intensive small group intervention.
So is that even things like phonics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they take a bunch of screeners to kind of figure out where they're at, and then we group them accordingly. Yeah. Sorry, if I'm going too fast for questions, I'm sorry. So our teachers have worked really hard this year, especially our 9th grade core band of teachers. Our 9th grade math teachers are truly looking at data weekly and adjusting to where kids are at. They're looking at their exit ticket data in their PLCs. They are truly working hard at making sure they're going back and meeting those skills again once, if not twice, before the second assessment. Our 9th grade ELA teachers are consistently using their resource. They're looking at all of their assessment data weekly and then going back and reteaching those skills. And then our 9th grade social studies teachers are really hitting small groups. Right now we have Mr. Kinzila writing an essay in his class, and he has 100% of his students writing an essay. And that's awesome. Like, students who have not written more than 3 sentences in a long time are writing full essays. So those are some of the wins that we've been having that you can't always see in our data, and I want to make sure those are celebrated because we've really pushed this year, and our staff are really meeting that expectation. And I want to make sure you guys know that. I'm interested to see what the end of the year data looks like, because I think with all of the things that Solution Tree is bringing in, all of the ways that we are continuing to push and using Mike Waniger and Jamie Kirsch, our instructional coaches, to be in classrooms and running small groups, helping to make sure students are engaged. I'm interested to see what we look like at the end of the year, now that we have extra interventions running. We're more comfortable with that. We're having better conversations with parents about student data. It'll be interesting to see how that's going. And then Mr. Marock's going to talk a little bit more about some of the behind-the-scenes work we're doing more with Solution Tree.
All right, so I just want to touch base just a little bit on, I know this seems small, but at the high school level, again, we tested almost nearly 100% of our kids for FastBridge, and I know that seems like a small thing, but at the high school level, we have a lot of kids that are at NTC for the Welding Academy. They're on work release. They're in the JITO program. There's a lot of different aspects, so it's not as easy what it sounds like to get 100% of kids tested, and we're very close to that again. So it gives us the best data possible to go in the direction that we need to go. The other thing that Mrs. Borneman talked about was our credit recovery. So basically, credit recovery is when a student fails a class, first or second semester, they either have to repeat that class back in person, or they have to take a summer school class or an online class. And much of the data that we've looked at is when a student's taking an online class on an online program without an instructor, they're not garnering many of the skills that they need to be successful as they move through their high school career. So like Mrs. Borneman said, this year during prime time, we ran an algebra credit recovery, we ran biology, and we ran an English 9 credit recovery, and we had many students that passed out of that credit recovery in person, and the data shows that when the student then moves on to the next grade level, so if I did algebra in person, credit recovery, and I go to geometry, I'm much higher likely to pass geometry because I did the in credit recovery. If I did it online, the data is showing that when those students go into geometry, but they pass it online in algebra, they're also failing geometry. So the in-person instruction has really helped to move kids in the right direction and gain the skills that they need in order to move on in their high school path. Summer school, many of it's been, again, credit recovery on a Chromebook or on a program. Again, those students were going back into those classes, again, from algebra to geometry, and just failing geometry again, and right back into the credit recovery program on the Chromebooks. So again, summer school, we're looking to move back into person and eliminate the credit recovery on the Chromebook. Again, it's showing, the data showing that those students are getting the skills that they need with the in-person instruction. A little bit about Solution Tree, like Mrs. Borneman talked. We've developed the Guiding Coalition. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a school leadership team made up of myself, Mrs. Borneman, our instructional coaches, and then a couple other staff members to help guide our district, because we know that we can't do it all of ourselves. Our instructional coaches can't do it all ourselves. And sometimes when you have a peer talking to a peer, they're going to help drive that culture in a positive way. So the Guiding Coalition's been a huge asset to our school. Some of the things that we're working on with Coach Waninger and Solution Tree are the Freire model, which is like a graphic organizer, and then Cornell Notes, basically identifying that key vocabulary. We know that if a student is reading something, but they don't understand key vocabulary, they're not going to be able to comprehend what they're reading in any subjects, whether that's history, math, science, social studies, Phi-Ed. So we did a lot of learning around that in a couple staff meetings. We had staff members present, and then we had staff members come back and present again. We're doing more learning around that here at our next staff meeting. And we've actually had some staff members came back and said, this is really working. We're seeing students more successful in our class. We've also worked a lot on small group instruction. Mr. Warninger just presented at our last staff meeting about the different areas of small group instruction. Many times people think it's just pulling kids and putting them in a small group. Yes, somewhat, but not entirely. There's different targeted groups that you can pull for small group instruction. There's large small group instruction, so there's a different varieties of small group instruction that can move, again, the needle on student success. Solution Tree recently came here, and what we did with our instructional coaches and admin is we went in the classrooms with our coach from Solution Tree, and we looked at what our instructional look for is. We're looking for a common assessment on what we wanted for our staff. So we looked at learning targets, we looked at areas of need, agendas, and then we talked about gradual release. So we know that our staff is looking for the same feedback and the same common feedback, so we're delivering the same message. And we focused on, again, learning targets, gradual release, agendas, and again, areas of highest need. So basically, if I sit up here and talk, JD, the entire time, you might not learn a whole lot, right? But if I maybe present to you the information that you need, and then you're working on that, that's giving the learning to you so that you can better learn. So we want to put the learning back on students and not just me sitting up here talking and me learning, because you might not be engaged. So we're trying to release that information to students so that they can garner the learning, and it's not just coming from me.
So JD, it's the I do, we do, you
Yep.
do. Like I do it and show you and model, we do it together to give you support, and then when you do it, I can give you feedback and assess if you understood it, or you're walking out the door where I have to pull you in a small room tomorrow and reteach that. So it's a model, a framework for lesson planning to make sure that you're hitting every student and accurately assessing if they have the information you taught in your learning chart.
So it's something that we're not quite there, but we're continuing to work on. And then just the work that we continuously do around scheduling, like Mrs. Borneman talked about, how we can continue to intervene with students. And then our judo program, which has been a huge successful for us this year. It's at our high school. Traditionally, it's been at NTC, but we've seen a high success rate in our judo program, and we continue to hopefully grow that. Any questions?
Not really a question, I just want to say that I've heard a lot from my student about Cornell, that is
Awesome.
really pushing it and stuff, so I just want to mention that. And then also, I was fortunate enough to sit in on PD day on the small group session, and I got to hear two different teachers talk about success stories and how that's actually working and how, you know, it is making a huge difference in the classroom, so just kudos to you guys, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing that.
We have a lot of staff this year that have really taken risks and challenges and stepped out of their comfort zone. And I think that comes down to the peer-to-peer communication more than just having to talk to Mr. Moronk and myself, and having Mr. Waniger there and Mrs. Kirsch there has, all of that is a less risk than having Mr. Moronk or I come in the classroom and co-teach with you. And so I think that's really been a huge benefit to us.
This is, I just can't remember what we're doing here, but for pride time, what did we do different than last year? Is it still at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day?
It's at the end of the day. Everybody stays unless you have like co-op YA work release, and you are assigned a location. We also did credit recovery during that time, and we have interventions running during that time. But that's something that, oh, sorry. Yeah. And that's also something that we're looking at for next year, not changing the schedule, but changing the name and how we are placing kids, what they're doing during that time to continue to make it more productive.
So kids on honor roll or something, are they, did they get to go home early? Or
No.
is that just like you go study something?
No, they're here. Most of them honestly are working on like AP classes, that kind of stuff.
Something not talked about directly is behavior management and just the environment within the building that I think is something to recognize, and kudos to you guys and your staff. There's students in classrooms most of the time, and it's been a very positive shift, which obviously if you're in the classroom, you're gonna have the increased opportunity to learn. But I know there's a lot of feedback on that and opinions about that in general, so that should be recognized too, because we're going to see change by having students in the classroom.
Jill, when you say a lot of feedback on that, are you saying some people prefer them not to do
So
that?
I'm saying in the community, that's been a thing, of like, there's no, the hallways all the time, or the bathrooms all the time, or the bathrooms are locked. We just, as a board, we've heard feedback, and rightfully so I wanna share that, that feedback's been taken very seriously, it has been the whole time, and we're seeing some changes, and that's gonna correlate to academic outcomes.
Comment a little bit on the behavior and how you both feel about that? Like the behavior in the building, I mean, better, worse? Any feeling on that?
I mean, I think the change in way we approach kids, the way we talk to kids, the way we approach them, the relationships that we make, those are all really driving forces with universal tier 1 just behavior management pieces. And I think that has, we've gone from this kid to how can we help this kid and what are their strengths and what can we do? And I think that goes a long way. It sounds really simple, but I think that's been huge in the culture of our school, not only for our staff, but for our students. Do we still have challenges? no doubt about it. But I think that universal piece has really helped. There's some other things that we've put in place just with Mr. Frederickson and working with students and keeping kids in school, maybe a separate location for the time being, that has helped. But again, I think that universal piece is the biggest piece that has helped drive us.
I think it also last year, it really helped when our administrative team came in and they actually really honed in on maybe, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 students that were really having issues with some of the classroom and stuff. And you guys were walking the halls and you were doing the one-on-ones, because we all know you guys have your hands full, and so do you guys, but like you took the time to come here and like personally deal with that group of students. And I'm hopeful, I don't know, but I'm hopeful that that carried over to this year. And so now they're more likely to, if they do get in trouble, they're gonna listen better or, just stay in the classroom, period. So I want to congratulate everybody for like doing a great job with that.
And I will say too that I do think that it did carry over for some, because I know before Amy and I went back into buildings as principals, we came to the high school one day and ran into 2 students who were typical hall runners last year, and they were over the moon sharing their grades and how they were passing and making A's, and they had future plans, and that was never a conversation that we were able to have with them last year. So that's always a win-win when you have kids who are engaged and care about what they're doing. You know, they felt like they had some.
And then told us that we were keeping them from class. Had to go.
And honestly, I mean, that very well could have been the key moment that turned their life going down to, more upward projection, so, yeah.
Of kids that really work.
I don't know what it was like last year exactly, but I know that this year staff are stepping up and they're saying, hey, this student, at the beginning of the year, I had some staff say, hey, this student is constantly by their locker and constantly late for pride time. Can I just take them in my pride time? My room is right here. And that student started getting work done. They started developing a relationship. So we're seeing staff step up and really meet kids where they're at. We have some staff who are working, the ELA department's working with the CTE department for some of our struggling learners, because they want to be able to write how to break down an engine and write more of like a how-to guide than their essay. And so as long as it's still meeting what they need to get done, they're being able to work together on getting that student back engaged in the classroom. And so we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing, we're reading Shakespeare, but I have an EL learner, so I have the Cliff Notes, and I have the Cliff Notes in like a funner version for them to help bring them in to make sure that they're engaged. Because some of our students are just not, they weren't engaged and they weren't feeling like the classroom was a place for them. So our team has really reached out and tried to do just different things just so kids felt more welcome. I think that's been a huge success for our staff. Okay.
Guys, just fine. Early on, in this semester, we probably had more expulsions in the first semester than we did have in the last 2 years. Do you think the fact that students were saying, wait a second, if you're misbehaving that much, you're gone, do you think they realize that, or don't you think they even have a clue?
I think it's just a lot of communication with families, and I mean, those are students we talk to a lot with their families, and I think it's just continued conversations. But we take learning very seriously, and that message is clearly conveyed on a daily basis to students and families, and we'll continue to do so. So it's not what we want, it's not where we want to be, but we are taking learning very serious at the high school.
I appreciate that the disconnect that seemed to have been present in the past between building and admin and district expectations no longer seems to be there. So there's a good connection of what the district expectations are. Instead of admin spinning their wheels trying to come up with solutions to address the struggle and just kind of being on your own island. That, from an outside perspective, does not seem to be the case anymore.
And I'll add one more thing that, you know, I think we continue to grow in the cell phone area piece and I know that, again, it seems small, but, learning when you don't have an electronic device in front of you, helps you stay engaged and also eliminates behaviors and other distractions as well that could lead into other things. So it's been a huge asset to our school to not have cell phones in high school.
How is that policy being handled still? I mean, we're still cell phone free, kids are following that?
Yep, it's, I wouldn't say every kid follows it, but I think what's really nice is that we, kind of like Jill had mentioned, this is our policy. Everyone knows our policy. We state it every day, and we communicate it. And there's really no questions about it. If some student were to violate it, we follow the policy, and it's gone very, very well. And there hasn't been a lot of pushback. So when the bell rings at 7:40, the cell phone has to be in their locker. At 3:15, they can pick it up out of their locker and take it back home.
Yep. Yeah, just in case you want it.
She'll put it up there, and you can just scroll on my computer if you want to see what you,
Oh,
two
okay.
fingers up and down.
Okay. Fancy. 2 fingers, not 1. Okay, well, that was really good, high school. You should be very proud of yourselves. Nice job. We're also working with Solution Tree. We are focusing on many of the same things that the high school is working on, but we're also working on some little different things. We have a lot of good things going on, but we have a lot of room for growth. Everybody always does, and we constantly work through that. Our biggest focus this year with Solution Tree is unpacking our standards. Like, what are the priority standards that we should be teaching and need to be teaching, and how do we know what would be essential? And the most recent work we did was a couple weeks ago, and we created a forward document where we have our skills that are going to be assessed on the forward exam, and then also throughout our content, what do we already hit and what do we need to spiral back to ensure that we know that our students have this knowledge. One of the sheets that Teal has right here, and we'll pass it around, it's called a Blitz Tracker. So we have our Red Robin, we talk about our Antigo Pride, and then each grade level and each student before ELA and math will have a Blitz Tracker. So they'll track their skill. The teacher also tracks it with a red-green. It's very similar to what you're seeing up here with our FastBridge. Red, the student didn't attain that skill yet. Green, they did. If they didn't attain it, then we're running a small group within that classroom with the teacher right away. And there's some pictures of some of those that Teal is passing around too. We've really challenged our teachers recently too with a bingo board with high leverage strategies. We didn't force everybody to do it, but we're getting a pretty good turnout, so we're happy about that. Unfortunately, what you do see with teachers, and I think you were kind of alluding that too, sometimes you don't want to be the tall poppy. You don't want to be that teacher oh, you're really doing all those things. You're just doing what your principals want you to do, right? So that's an unfortunate thought process, but it's reality. So really breaking down, a lot like what they had said at the high school, you have that, and you maybe don't have it at the elementary level, but you definitely start seeing it at the middle and then the high school level. So our bingo board is really trying to get people to show, no matter who you are, I don't care if you're a special ed teacher or a band teacher, whatever grade level teacher you are, you're probably doing a lot of these high level strategies, but you haven't even given yourself credit that you're doing it. Or maybe you've done this and you've done it in a different way that nobody else thought of. So some of the teachers provided verbiage with their bingo and some have provided pictures. We've taken those pictures now that they're sharing with us, as long as the parents give us approval to put them on social media. We're putting them in our Pride Weekly.
our dojo, our different website messages, just because I think sometimes we focus so much on maybe like a celebration or a shout out of a student, maybe around behavior, but maybe academic. But to me, I think we need to kind of change that story too. What are our teachers doing, and then what can we do to partner with you at home? A lot like with the reading plans, we got to really do more of that with our families, and we just have to break that barrier down. We need to bring them in. We need to go to where they're at, a lot like what our school board has done with different things, like with the referendum. We need to do that more because I do feel since COVID, it's even gotten worse. So we need to make sure that we're getting back to that. So we're excited about that. Yes, you can talk.
Just one thing along the bingo boards and those high leverage strategy pieces, I think one huge difference maker with those is engagement within the classroom. When students are engaged, especially connected with some of those high-level strategies, they're not just a showboat, but it's really getting students excited and engaged around vocabulary words, around writing, around a lot of those things that are unengaging in a classroom if you would present it in a different way. And so those strategies being presented the way that they are has really raised some of our engagement. And this is a crucial time of the year for that because we're well into the school year. We have a lot of big topics, deep content right before our forward exam that we're diving into, plus all the spiral review that's taking place for forward. So it's a great time to get students engaged and get them learning in the classroom.
And I'm going to turn it right back to you, Teal, because I think one thing that we all need to talk about is attendance. And I know that you didn't talk about the high school, but I know you worked through that. But every single teacher that has a meeting with a family or with us, attendance is one of the number one things that comes. They miss this learning. How are we going to ensure that they get this learning? There's so many days that we're gone. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's been a huge thing that we've been working on here at the middle school with all of our students and families from 4th grade all the way through 7th. We've had some really good celebrations around the attendance piece, like even to the point where this first semester, in terms of citations given to students or given to families at our 7th grade level. So kind of going through our attendance program leading up to that 7th grade level, getting ready to graduate. We were very excited that during that first semester we had 0 students that received a citation at the 7th grade level, which is a huge celebration. And it's not even that, they could have received it and we just didn't give it to them. None of them met the criteria for receiving that. So that has been a huge celebration, just seeing them grow and understand the importance of the attendance piece. And we continue to build on that, trying different incentives. We have a neat incentive that is coming up called March to Class. That's going to be done in the month of March here, where students can receive an incentive before going into spring break for students with 100% attendance in March and also 100% attendance to class on time, which has really helped doing some of these different things, and some of the attendance, our tardy clinics and those kind of things have really helped reduce the number of students that are showing up to class late or coming to school late. So we got a lot of good celebrations around our attendance.
All right, so that again, that attendance piece is a huge piece when you're looking at this data with any FastBridge, language arts, math, all of it. Our teachers, everybody's really, like what Trina kind of said too, like you see your video data and you're like, oh, okay, we're not all in the green. And that's good, like we want to be all in green, but we looked at the longitudinal data also, and we are making progress. And what we do notice that typically you see this typical dip a little bit in the mid-year, and then you typically see this bigger growth at the end of the year. So we're not hoping as a strategy, we have directly put some things into our strategies. We meet pretty intensely with our coaches and our title and our reading specialists. Amy helps us a lot too. We take a look and just really what are the major concerns? Like an assessment can show you one thing, but maybe you have to dig a little bit deeper. So we did add a new assessment for ELA this time. Beyond the FastBridge, we took a look at what's called Words Your Way. And that gave us a little better look into some of the students with their spelling and their phonics. If you remember back in the beginning of the year, 4th and 5th grade, every 4th and 5th grade student had Reading Horizons, which is an intervention, universally. Every single 4th and 5th grader had it the whole first semester. At semester, our goal was to be able to not have everybody have Reading Horizons and to be able to tier that off, who really needs this continued Reading Horizon intervention and who doesn't, and then how can we start putting them and giving them some different opportunities. So we did succeed in that. So 5th grade, we actually have 1 intervention group with Reading Horizons. And, no, we have 2 currently right now, and actually we're meeting next week, Friday, to kind of look at our data again and make sure, do these kids need to stay in here, or are we going to be adjusting them? And then our 4th grade also has 2 Reading Horizons. But it went from like 110 students, now we have 40 students getting serviced in an intervention time versus a full block of class time. So that's a big celebration. We're continuing to monitor that. But by using different pieces of assessment, that really does give you a different lens to look at it, because not one piece of assessment is going to give you everything. We have found that language exclamation, which is also used at the high school, we noticed that we saw improvement there with our students, so we've added 2 sections for our intervention for language exclamation, so we're proud of that. Special education started with a lot of different interventions this year, new ones. Spire is one of them, so we're continuing to grow with that particular knowledge. We do still have extension during our WIN. We added extension for reading WIN in 5th grade. Because of that whole Reading Horizon, we were able to reduce the number of students that needed intervention, and we have a reciprocal board, wonderful time intervention going on with 5th grade, same as 6th grade and 7th grade. 4th grade, we're still not able to provide that extension opportunity because we still have too many students that are filling the gaps. But we also have those different types of things going on in math too. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about just tier 1 level for math first. Our 4th and 5th grade teams, Amy mentioned a little bit earlier, they are going through a pilot right now, and they have been piloting 2 different curriculums. And we did get some awesome results at both the 4th and the 5th grade level in terms of the winter FastBridge assessment. And it does have in part to do with that curriculum piece of it. Both of those programs, our staff had said, have been very engaging for our students. There is manipulatives, there's a lot of chances for students to be engaged in the learning. And one thing that we really notice is a lot of those topics, especially some of those major topics, like fractions, for example, where you're digging into that at the 4th and 5th grade level, and that's a big part of what that forward exam and our FastBridge exams are around. That has been covered more in depth, and students are getting a much deeper level of learning by using some of these new resources that we have. Also, the assessments that students are taking that are a part of these resources are amped up. And so that has been a big change for our staff and our students. And there's barriers to that, but also we've seen how that has flown into both our FastBridge and hopefully our forward assessment as well, in terms of students being able to tackle those types of assessments. So they've been really happy with the pilot program so far, and we're continuing to dig in around both of those resources. At the 6th and 7th grade level, they are more challenging for students, absolutely. They require a much deeper level of knowledge around those topics from our students in order to solve those correctly. But it also gives us an opportunity and some of the resources in terms of the breakdown of proficiency and some of those proficiency scales. Those are really allowing us as instructors to take a look at where is the student scoring and where are they at, and here's maybe a couple strategies that we could do with a small group in the classroom in order to help build that proficiency higher. So it's not that they're not showing some level of proficiency, but definitely the level that they're asking for there, and that we have talked around, especially with our solution tree work, as this is where we want students to be at. Those assessments are there, and that's just different and new compared to the resource that we were using. So it does feel different for our staff and students. They are getting some of both, yes. Yep, they've gotten to experience both of them. Any more questions around the 4, 5? I'll move to 6, 7. For 6, 7 for us, we've had a little bit more of a challenge. This year, we did reduce our number of staff at that level by 1 teacher just due to our number of students that we had at those grade levels. And that switched our schedule a little bit where we're not running that block time for the ELA and math, which has kind of reduced our level, our time that staff, our students are in front of the staff. And so that has been a little bit more challenging in terms of getting to that small group piece. We're teaching that lesson for math and then getting into some work time with students, and we don't have as much small group time. And one thing that we saw at both the 6th and 7th grade level with our WIN interventions, students that were with a math group, especially on the lowest end, did rise up, and even students at our extension, we have some celebrations around that extension piece. Our 7th graders have had a group of a little more than 20 that have been engaging in the 8th grade CPM book or the 8th grade curriculum and been able to kind of accelerate their learning through that. And that group has actually grown. We have 3 or 4 more students that have reached a level where they can now join that. So we have both on our lower end and our higher end, we did see growth at both the 6th and 7th grade level. It was the students that we didn't have assigned to a math intervention and ELA intervention, kind of they're in limbo in the middle there. They were proficient. And when we think about students being able to either gain or lose just 1 or 2 points, can show them on either side of that line in the green or in the red. So we knew that we really needed to be intentional in this next round of WIN intervention with all of those students and see if we could get them some more time in front of the math instructors. So we did create more of a rotation for our WIN at both the 6th and 7th grade level, where more students now are getting to rotate in front of their math teacher and getting more time with their math teacher in order to catch up on some of those small group interventions around the skills that they didn't get the first time in the classroom. So we know that's going to help have a bigger impact when we get to our spring result. I don't know if there's anything else around tier 2.
Just one last thing that's not up there. Our behavior has been amazing this year. We looked at our data halfway through the year, and I think we were 50% decrease in behavior referrals from the year before. And then if you go back even 4 years, every year it's decreased. That says a lot about how you can get things done in that classroom because we don't have as many disruptions. It's been very consistent. The students know, the families know, the teachers know how we're going to be working through these things, and I feel this year's been the most consistent that we've had.
Yep, agreed. I think like the system that we've worked in and all of our staff, kind of even what the high school was getting at a little bit, it's the culture. It's everybody working together to just put learning at the forefront. And so anybody that is joining into that system, I really only think is going to benefit from that. I wouldn't see it going in the other direction just because it just keeps building. And as it builds, everybody is recognizing, families are recognizing, students are recognizing, staff are recognizing how much that really helps in terms of us being able to focus on that learning piece. And it's just going to welcome people into that culture.
It shows in our data. I think as your data goes up and the conversation around your district goes up, we've already heard from other districts of like, what are you guys doing in Antigo? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, your data's going up, people are talking about, like, the messaging is different out there, and then when you see that, when you go to apply for a job, you pull it up on WeCan, most people go directly to the state report card and pull up some of that data and say, like, okay, from past years, they got something going on at that district that is moving in the right direction in which I want to be a part of. I think things that we're doing is hitting the community and communities around us, because I have worked in multiple districts and people will say, how come before I was hearing like all this negative stuff and now people are like, you got to go there for their actual some of that positive talk, and I think as that spreads, as our data goes up, as people continue to be proud of Anago, and then not just internal, but spread that, we'll see the candidates. We already have candidates, I think 12 for one position that we posted, and these are 12 like actual candidates, not just like, I don't have a license, I'm just trying to throw it in there, like people who are qualified, who we would look at as actual candidates to interview. So I think that the message is out there, we have to continue to build it.
And I do think it is a lot from the community and the staff, because typically if someone's going to apply, they're going to reach out to someone who knows someone or someone who's in the district, and then staff will say, yeah, we're getting our act together. Things are really taking a turn for the better in our district. So.
Yeah, well, we just love to put in, I know high school talked about it, but that staff piece is absolutely huge. When you talk about building a culture, maintaining high expectations, and just that focus around learning, we have so many of our staff and grade levels that are investing in lunch and learns, which is just giving up their lunchtime. Let's help with students, bringing students in after school, doing labs after school, just so much work with and the focus on the learning and the students. It's been awesome. We love them. So thank you, staff.
Guys, the question I think JD asked was about, once we make the big changes, is your behavior, is that getting better and better and better as you're telling us through your data? It's not going to be an issue at all for you guys, because when we open up that 4K4, that'll be a third grade student going into that new school. The eighth graders are gonna come back to the middle school, out of the high school, and it'll be your same grades. Instead of 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, the next year it's the same kids in 5,
We've already
6,
thought
7,
about it.
8.
Yeah.
Have them for 2 years straight. It's not gonna be an issue at all for you guys.
Yeah, we're not worried about it at all.
Your mind.
So the middle school admin will not say it about themselves, so I'm gonna say it for them. We work with a Solution Tree coach named Amy Clark, and at Solution Tree, which is nationwide, they come together, and the highest performing coaches, which is Amy Clark, she's one of the best they have at Solution Tree. She works with schools across our nation. She has to come with one celebration, and each coach has to come, and they sit with all the other coaches in the nation, and she celebrated out that she has never worked with an admin team like Anago Middle School, who when she says something, it is done to a high level. She said she is shocked at, she comes back and all the progress that has already been done. She said she's never seen anything like it, so it was celebrated nationwide to all the coaches of Solution Tree, so.
Thank you for sharing that, Amy, because that was my shout out. Every year I like to refer to the two of you as a dynamic duo, because you truly are. It's really exciting to watch you guys and see your work in action. I really appreciate your dedication to our district, so thank you very much. And
Do you want
sharing
this?
out the behavior reports, the progress of the reduction in the behavior reports, the attendance. These are huge pieces that tie into academic achievement, and huge pieces that our community has been invested in, and we're showing that we're hearing, we're responding, and we're seeing change. So, dynamic duo, thank you very much.
Anybody need a stretch break, bathroom break? Good? All right, keep going. Okay, so we're kind of going in reverse order, which is a little different from the past. So there's a few acknowledgements that I kind of want to mention. You had Cornell notes up there for your upperclassmen. We have second and third graders taking Cornell notes, and that's just been a huge push for writing. So when we look at vertical alignment, it's very neat to see the efforts that we're doing at a younger age to make sure everything is nice and steady for you guys is already happening. I also would like to mention your countdown to forward. Thank you to Heather and Teal. They met with Solution Tree. Heather had mentioned that they're doing a countdown to forward exam. So we are doing the same thing at our elementaries, really investing in test-taking strategies. We are pumping up gold stars and things on the announcements for effort and mastering test skills. So thank you for that. The math pilot is also very engaging for our students, particularly at the kindergarten age. Like you think, oh, like all your kindergartners go off, learn, get in counting collections. Like that's chaos when you think about the planning. But these kids are so engaged. They're counting, they're stacking, they're questioning each other. So to see 5- and 6-year-olds do that has been pretty awesome. Let me think what else we had. Oh, attendance. We've had a great attendance meeting with a 4K student from West at the middle school. They had a 4th grade brother, so we were able to align our efforts. So, all right, do you guys want to come up with me, or do we want to? Okay. Well, it's just very similar. Okay, it's just very similar as we step into all of our plans. So as you look up, we have a lot to celebrate with our 4K team. These are a group of teachers and instructional assistants that are willing to take risks. They're always reflecting. We've had great PD, and these students at 4K are writing, they're drawing, they're illustrating, they're labeling. Like, that is impressive stuff for 4-year-olds to be doing. And a huge shout out to our staff. So when you look at the number of reading plans, it looks a little daunting, and I would like to shout out Amy and Miss Gerke and all of our coaches. The planning for Act 20 was very seamless. Teachers were thankful. You know, at first we were all like, what? How are we going to do this? And every teacher was calm. We were able to get all of the testing done efficiently. Instruction continued. And I think the biggest reflection when you're looking at these reading plans is each plan is a student. Like, we had to send these home and say, your kid is not meeting our expectations or benchmark level. Like, that's really hard to do. So I think they took it very personally, and like, it gave them like a sense of urgency, where before it was maybe just a little bit of an assessment and, oh, we'll dig down and do better next time, where now it's like, this is for real. We got to do better than what we have. So our goal at the end of the year is obviously to reduce these reading plans. What was the district total?
We had 183, I think. We looked at last year's, and we didn't obviously have Act 20, and we were still using Bassbridge, but we always try to keep a barometer of where we are. We're down about 15 reading plans of where we would have been last year in winter if we would have had to do them, or have done them. So different testing, it's not apples to apples, but just kind of as we knew Act 20 was coming, we were trying to compare and see, okay, if it was here, how many would fall under? Okay, if it was now, how many would fall under it? We've moved in a year in a really good place, and we're hoping by spring, if we can meet the qualifications to promote out of that reading plan, so we don't have to move into next year with it.
Would you say, are the plans like very different, or are they all, I mean, it depends, because you identify different deficits.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the deficit, a lot of our kindergartners, right, have some of the same deficits that we're working on, so some of it, yes, is the same, but it's 8 pages long, so it's like quite an intense plan and has to bring everything in, like attendance is a factor, their progress monitoring is a factor, so some of them do look quite similar if their kids are working at the kindergarten level and they both don't have their, phonemic awareness. Yes, they're both gonna be working on that in a small group, but we had to do that for every student on a reading plan, so.
Yeah, so as these staff continue to build their small group instruction, it's been very targeted, and we've been able to already see some growth in progress monitoring. So when we have like our mid-year check-ins with staff, my question for them is, what are we going to do differently by the week of March 17th to get students off of reading plans? Like, what are we doing? What student are we targeting? What is the skill that we're building? And kindergarten looks a little bit different at West compared to the other 2 schools. We have 10 kindergarten students going to the title location for an hour, and there's 3 different centers. So they're working on key skills in each of those centers with Ms. Krogh and Ms. Krivishine, where the rest of the students are staying and they're working on their 95%, and then they get their small group centers. And keep in mind, there's 44 of them, so we have a very huge kindergarten population. So that's been awesome to see each kid truly get what they need to build their skills. First grade is the least amount of students per class. So for for us to see like 17 reading plans, I think our first grade team was just like super defeated, but I've seen the energy, the planning, the commitment to making the changes in our first grade team to be sure that students do not have these reading plans. Our first grade still has WIN, but they are keeping their own students. So we agreed that everybody knows their own students the best instead of sending them, across the hall to a different teacher. So they have 10 minutes of small group every day, and then you're getting your targeted skill. And honestly, some of the groups are only 5 minutes. We're gonna do this for 5 quick minutes, and then the next several students are going to come up. Second grade, another large class. We have 42 second graders. And our 2 dedicated second grade teachers have so much experience. And if you think about someone being in education for 39 years, you think they're just gonna use, their old skills and not try anything new. But these 2 teachers, always digging in, always trying something new, always taking risks, asking a lot of questions. So second grade grew tremendously in the spring last year. So I predict that to be the case again. And I think our third grade across the district looked very strong. So with that being said, we have forward exam coming up, and I know our teachers are like, I really feel super ready this year for forward. So that has been very uplifting.
And one of the components to get off a reading plan at the end of third grade is you have to pass the ELA portion of the forward. So they're still, DTI still trying to figure out it. I know, it's very exciting. So it's that and that they're hitting their skill group and their progress monitoring. They wavered on that a little at the last meeting I was at, that maybe we won't do that, but in our heads, right, we want them to be able to pass that ELA forward test, which means you're ready for fourth grade. So that's gonna be kind of our barometer of where our reading plans fall and if our reading plan students are hitting that proficiency around forward and not hitting basic or below basic.
Originally when they did it, that was the threat that, hey, we're gonna hold you back or something, right? So I forgot what the consequence is now. If you're still
Well,
on a reading
it's
plan.
wavering in the old Act 20 world right now. So there isn't a definition of holding them back, but there is gonna be some requirements around summer school. If you are on a reading plan, you will be required to go to summer school. IEPs, students with an IEP might look a little different. So there's some different qualifications. A student with an ILP, if it's a language barrier, and I'm my first year in English, then yes, I'm not gonna hold them to that accountability of passing the ELA test. So there's some wavering there that they're still trying to figure out what that actual defining you are off a reading plan situation is gonna be. So as soon as I know more, I'll let you guys know.
And our title team at West is very strong, so I'd like to shout them out as well. The amount of time they spend finding the root cause and connecting with the students is very impressive. So we spend a couple times a week meeting, and what title is working on in their classroom, we are replicating in the small group session as well. So if you're working on letters L, M, and Q, in small group in title, guess what? We're taking that to the teacher, and the teacher is reinforcing that same lesson. So the students are kind of getting a double dose, and that has been very instrumental with Ms. Krivershine and Ms. Krogh. So I totally appreciate that. Moving on to math, I think the math world, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to acknowledge and recognize all the work behind and around these reading plans. I'm not in education. I'm somewhat familiar with IEPs.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing all of this work is well appreciated and well received from at least the board.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of work. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around how is it feasible for a teacher to, and there's help, right, in creating the plans and doing the testing. How is it feasible to do all of these things?
Yeah.
You've got a good handle on it. There's going to be things that you're going to figure out don't work so well and pivot from there. But kudos to the staff, thank you to the staff and the administration, because this seems insane to me to have 8 pages times X number of students per grade and 3 buildings. It's a lot. So when I'm putting this into context, I've sat here all night thinking, I have no idea conceptually how this comes together, but you guys have it figured out, and I want to recognize that it's a lot, and thank you for that.
Whoop whoop for Amy. Whoop whoop. No. You,
What's special about Anago that other districts, like I'm always on these webinars and things for Act 20 outside, like at night, because it's a cool life. Like 9 o'clock watching Act 20 webinars, but the stress in other districts around, like you said, the teachers had to write the reading plans alone, but no one trains you on how to write a reading plan, and we had to create our own reading plan here in Anago, because there's not just a makeshift one from DPI. So for teachers in other districts that are like, I don't know how to make this, what am I supposed to put on it? The special part about Anago is there was a collective team to sit with those teachers and walk them through. We had a framework, we already had all their information pulled in, they could work on the goals. So I think that that's a highlight for Anago as we look for candidates, you know, coming in to the elementary position, that you have people that are here to support you and a team that wraps around you, that you're not sitting in it alone. And what I'm hearing from other districts from teachers are, I don't know how to do a reading plan, so I just like clicked letters into a Google Doc and sent it home and hope for the best. Well, we know what happens then. Everyone doing their own thing becomes not a system. So the system that Anago has will definitely tweak and make better as we go, but I think that that's something special that should be shouted for Anago, that there's system and people to support you when you come in, that you're not left alone in some of those harder pieces.
yeah, good work. So as Teal talked about and Amy, we're in that math pilot year, but the excitement around math is huge. Some things we'd like to see is kind of a replica of what the middle school is doing with math interventions as well. And Jolene and I have been doing some walkthroughs together. She is our math coach, and she spent a lot of time in our kindergarten classes creating these math toolboxes and really creating independence for our math students. So I look forward to us choosing a resource, going through some training, and really nailing down. And I'm talking about kindergarten for math because they were very, very appalled by their results, and they're like, we got to do something different. So our teachers already started small groups for math as well. So again, I will shout out all of our staff and our support systems, and I'll take any questions you might have. None? You ran out? Okay.
I'm going to operate over there so I can scroll my own computer and all that good stuff, yeah. So the next one is North Elementary, and one of the biggest things that I can say we have really worked on is getting behavior under control, because the building was not in a state where kids were able to learn. There was so much disruption. So one of the big things that we did was we put a plan in place. During instruction, all classroom doors are closed, because if you have a student who leaves the classroom and they're trying to run up and down the hall, if all the doors are open, it's providing them an audience. So we really worked on implementing some type of a PBIS system and setting very explicit expectations for students and for how we were going to operate as an entire staff. And I feel like that has been one of the best things that we've done, because our students are being successful. They are able to sit and attend and learn and be students. We have brought back Monday morning meetings where our staff are now running those. I did it for a couple of months and said, you know, this isn't me, this is we. It's our building, they're our students. We're going to do this together. And they were troopers, of course, and took that on, and they're incorporating students into those Monday morning meetings, and it's part of our daily announcements. We celebrate the students. Another thing that we have worked really hard was to bring families back into our building, because that was something that we really needed to work on. And we had a CEO assembly today, and I can tell you that the gymnasium was loaded with families, which was a blessing. And when people were leaving, they were stopping and saying, that was one of the best things I have seen. I wanted to raise my hand too, just like the kids, because we were all there celebrating. The kids know the expectations, and we're operating well. Now, does that mean we have no behaviors? No. It means we have less. We have hiccups from time to time, but our building is in a place where they know when learning time starts and they know what the expectations are. Our kindergarten classrooms had some students who were not really at a place where they were able to start learning, and we spent a lot of time bringing back student study team meetings where we worked with a coach who had some extensive behavior experience. We put plans in place, we met each week, and we kept tweaking it until we had success. And just today, one of the students came and found me in the art room and was eager to share how successful he had been on his assessment, which was something that last year there was no knowledge around what a letter was, much less a number or how to make the sound. So we have a lot of success stories and lots to celebrate at North, and we do. I am very proud of my staff. They work very hard. They're very resilient. They don't seem to ever shy away from anything I throw at them. Let's do this. You know, they jump in and they're ready to go. So I'm very proud of the hard work that they've put toward this year. One thing that was very concerning to me going into North was I knew that we had our current third grade students had 2 years that their classroom teacher left. So third grade test scores count twice, so I was very leery of how we were going to be able to manage that. And I'm very proud of how hard our third grade team has worked at North, and they've made some significant gains and growth academically as well as behaviorally. Our class overall is struggling a little bit with their maturity level, but I am seeing that turn the corner, which is exciting as well, because they too are preparing and being students. So one thing that Ms. Maddock didn't talk about that I want to put a plug in for all of us, even at the middle school, and I'm thinking it's happening at the high school, is we have gotten our instructional assistants some extensive training. I am a firm believer that when we have extra people in the building, that we should be leveraging their skill set as well. And there's nothing saying that an instructional assistant can't reteach something. So getting our instructional assistants trained, they've been doing at the elementary level some Orton Gillingham training, so that when we have kids who are struggling with letter sounds or letter identification, our instructional assistants can pull them out or push into their classroom and do a quick 5-minute drill to help close that achievement gap. So that has been something really big as well. So now we will go to the data. So as you will see, North Elementary, we had a 3% increase in our 4K, and we're really excited. Even our kindergarten teachers are talking about how excited they are next year to get our 4K class because they're so well behaved. They're completely quiet in the hallways. You never know they're anywhere around, and they're working really hard, and they're doing very well. So they have a rather large class. I think there's 23 kids in the classroom, and we have one teacher, but they're working very hard and making growth. For kindergarten, we have a total of 9 reading plans. That's one thing I also have to say about my staff. I feel like they're pretty competitive, and having reading plans wasn't something that they took easily, but they were up for the challenge. And again, reiterating what everyone else has said, Ms. Stutzring did an exceptional job pulling the instructional coaches, our title staff, our reading specialists together so that our teachers didn't miss instruction time and they were able to continue the learning for our students. So our kindergarten has 9 reading plans. We still have 44% that are below. First grade has 15 reading plans, which is 69% of the class is still below grade level. Second grade has 15 reading plans, and third grade has 16 reading plans. So for a total in the entire building at North Elementary, we have 55 reading plans.
Which is the smallest amount in the district. She won't say it, so I'm gonna say it. North has the least amount of reading plans right now.
So some of the things that we're doing is very similar to what Ms. Maddock is doing at West and what Ms. Stutzream is doing. As soon as we got the reading plans, the overall plan was we're going to start working with small groups. That's always a great strategy. And the teachers started planning with the coaches immediately as soon as we got through the Ames Web testing, and we met. I was able to take time to go and meet with the teachers at East and at West, and it was very beneficial to hear the teachers talk about the test results and what the reading plan was going to consist of, and how they were already brainstorming strategies and things that they could do to make sure that we're closing the gap and we're improving our student achievement. And next, I will skip down. We have skill group interventions. I'll save that and let Ms. Stutzream talk about that in hers. And of course, Title, we're still using Title, and we're also using Spire and Sound Sensible, Reading Horizons for interventions. And Spire, was Spire new this year for the elementary? So that was a new.
Those were both new. What we found last year is we didn't have enough intensive interventions around those like students who had severe gaps in a lot of different of the foundational skills. So not just phonics, but I'm missing a lot of it. Spire and Sound Sensible really hits all those gaps and moves kids quickly into readers. So we use that around our students with IEPs, and Title students are the kids that are furthest away from that proficiency line.
Thank you. And up next, we have math. Our 4K has had a 27% increase, kindergarten 7%, first grade 21%, second grade is 14% growth, third grade has a 5% growth. So combined 14% improvement in math at North Elementary, and I know our teachers are really anxious about the math pilot and nearing the finish line of getting ready to make a decision, and then learning about how they're going to get their professional development next year regarding the new resource. One thing that we all know that we still need to work on in the district is a math intervention or interventions. But it's like I told staff yesterday when I was in a meeting with some of them, you know, we're trying to eat an elephant, but we got to take it one bite at a time. There are so many things that had to be put in place. So we're getting there. It's just going to take us a little bit of time before we do. Continuing the work through PLCs. I think last year when we started with instructional coaches, there were lots of questions around, well, if we're struggling for teachers, why do we have coaches? Why don't we just pull them and put them in a classroom? But when you use instructional coaches as an academic return of investment and you work through the understanding of what an instructional coach does with classroom teachers, I really feel like many of our staff today, if you were to tell them, we're going to pull your instructional coaches, they would be very upset by that because it's an extra thought partner. And many times when you're a classroom teaching, you're on an island all your own, and I think they have found great value in our coaches. So kudos to all the work that Ms. Stutzream has done with her instructional coaching staff, and now with our district reading specialist, and getting us up and ready for the Ames web testing and the reading plans. So, questions? Okay, thank you.
So when I was asked to take over East Elementary, Glenda and I really wanted to make sure that if we did get a principal to come in, that we had things aligned so that that principal didn't have two separate schools to run. So a lot of the things that she is doing, I am also doing at East. East didn't have PBIS before, that positive behavior intervention support. So that was one of the first things that we both put in. For North, they've had it for years, and a lot of the teachers had an understanding. East, we did not. So we're taking a little bit of time to grow that right now. Before we get to the data, one of the biggest things we did at East was the culture and climate of the building. When I walked in, there were kids running up and down, screaming in hallways, screaming in teachers' faces. I walked in thinking like, don't change too much, and then like 20 minutes in, I was like, nope, we gotta do some stuff. So the teachers have worked really hard, and one really good thing that we do is we have a plan around every kid, not only academically but behaviorally, and the expectation, like everyone is saying, is this is a learning environment. We don't come for anything else. So that has helped. We have morning meetings as well. We really worked on, East has a lot of big emotions in our students, so that emotional regulation. A lot of our students now will come and say like, I'm feeling this, and they can identify a feeling, which at the younger years is very important. They're taking accountability, because before it was everyone's making me mad and we couldn't get to academics, when now it's I chose this behavior, this is how I fixed it. Sometimes they just come and tell you just to tell you like I did something wrong. I was like, I didn't ask, but also great. How did you fix it? And they always have a plan. So we've been training our students to, if you make a mistake, how do you fix it? How do you move forward without having big reactions and big emotions? Our hallways are quiet now, doors are shut, everyone's in there learning. The biggest thing is when a kid comes in the hallway, even to go to the restroom, you are missing learning. You better the learning is happening. So they'll even come out, I know I'm missing learning, but I'm gonna go to the restroom and I'm gonna go back in. So that feeling that our students know that the learning is happening and not just, I'm just out here, but that you are missing something if you are not here, and that sense of belonging has been really important at East, because our kids really felt disconnected from school, and it's just a place somebody drops me off and I have to come. And now you hear kids talking about I get to come. And we intentionally did that at staff meetings talking about kids. We talked about like a kid and the entire school is wrapped around them. Everyone has a role. Your role might be all you need to do is say hi and his name. You don't need to address any behaviors with him. If he's doing something wrong in front of you, that's not your lane. He's got this core group of people who do that. He gets love from everyone else all the way down to his classroom, so that he's not hearing this. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? We had that a lot with our students, trying to redirect, and it was too much. That doesn't feel good coming in the school. So we really defined our roles around who's handling behaviors with certain students, who are their go-to people, and who are the people that just get to love them. And our goal at East was you say every kid's name. Every kid's name as they walk down the hallway, when they come in, before they hit their classroom door, they should hear it 4 times with a smile on your face, ready for the day. And that was important because we wanted them to feel like you belong here, we know you, you are loved here, and that's why we get to have you in our building. So that's been a huge change, and we can see it in our students now. They come around and say like, I'm so loved. Yep. And we're learning, so they're starting to repeat it, which is great, because now I think they feel like I want to be here rather than this place again. And the teachers have really put in that effort to show every student that they are important as they walk in the door. So our data here at East, we're really proud of our 4K, up 28%. They have put in some work in that 4K. We had a lot of students who came in at the beginning that didn't have a lot of their skills, which is great that we're showing a lot of great work there. 16 reading plans in kindergarten, 17 in first grade, 21 in second, and we know that oral fluency is, we were not pushing them hard enough on their fluency. We didn't have the level of rigor that we needed to, so we've addressed that. And our grade 3, which is a great celebration, is 8 reading plans. Only one of those kids do not have an IEP. So when we looked at that, we said, okay, our 3rd graders are gonna rock that forward assessment for ELA. So we flipped our win time to math, because when you look at our math data, you will see that 3rd grade has negative 10%. So we flipped our win to small group math instruction. We struggle with our place value, number sense, understanding our basic fluency facts. And as middle school is looking at me like, don't send them with that data, we will not. So we have a plan to make some small groups an intentional focus. We have our instructional aides, like Ms. Sojinsky said, that have training now, that feel better about pulling a small group. So we'll work through that. 19% up in 4K. Kindergarten has a 0%. We are not loving that. We weren't doing as many small groups and intentional targeted groups that we needed to. So we've changed that already. 18% growth in first grade, 12% growth in second grade. So across the board, seeing really good stuff happening, knowing that our 3rd grade math is kind of where that focus is going to be. I raced our 3rd grade math on multiplication fluency the other day, because they were like, it's fine, Miss Stutstream. It's not fine. Like, we are lighting a fire under you. You have to do better, and you have to have some urgency for your education. So we have some competitions going with our 3rd grade classrooms against teachers to see if they can beat us. And I said, we're not going to take it easy on you, because you need to know your multiplication facts, because 4th grade is coming. So they're really excited about that. Some say they were practicing at home to beat me. I said, I hope so. So having some of that joy around education and learning, that the fun isn't just ice skating and recess, it is the learning. Another celebration across elementary is we do 1-minute conferences with our counselors, with every student, so they just finished that. They said it was the first year at elementary across 3 buildings that they had more kids say that math and reading were their favorite subjects. Usually it was Phi Ed and recess and lunch, which is not a subject. But they actually said that their favorite thing is learning. And that this is the first year where across the board kids felt like they belonged and they loved being at school. Like their verbiage was like, I belong here. Do you know how many people love me? And that we haven't seen before, so just an added piece of all 3 elementary buildings that our kids are feeling those changes. Because it's one thing if we do them, but if it's not coming through our kids, then what's the point? So if you want to just collect, or go back, Ms. Oginski, to that document that I have on there, I'll share this out with the board if you want to look. I know JD might be interested, yep. We do have to post Act 20 stuff on our website at some point. One of the things is kindergarten through 3rd grade intervention option. So this is what we've already shared with our staff. We haven't put it out to the community yet, but it's different interventions under every one of those specific skill groups that if you're struggling, we can help create a barrier for your deficit, that we can really intervene and get you where you need to be. So eventually, all of our Act 20 stuff will be on our website, and we'll make sure that everything's posted along with our new policy that eventually comes into place as we move forward with that. But this is a great resource for our teachers so that they can know, I have this skill gap in this kid, what do I do? Sometimes in districts, you just end with that question of, what do I do? Or I Google something. We have explicit systematic interventions at the elementary now where you're not veering off course. We have it for you. Here it is. Let us model, and then let us give you feedback. So that's been a great success. Any questions on any of the data for tonight? Ms. Oginski, anything to add? All right, well, thank you so much. We will see you back in spring for data with a lot more celebrations and hard work.